So they've hired Shell at this point. He's moving up to Seattle. They rent a house in Bellevue, famously. You actually biked by it the other day, right?
I did. I was in the neighborhood and I was listening to a great podcast on the Internet History Podcast with friend of the show, Brian McCullough. He was interviewing Shell about the early days, about this house that Jeff McKenzie lived in, and they have the garage retrofitted to be an office, Amazon's first office, and Shell is programming sitting in that garage. And I looked and it was like a few blocks from me, and I was like, I got to ride by.
You texted me the photo. I was so jealous.
Which felt wrong. Someone lives there and all that, but it is a historical landmark in the world.
Well, you didn't go knock on the door.
No.
Yeah, I think that's fine. So they just need one more thing, which is capital. Jeff and McKenzie had done great at D.E. Shaw. So they put in $95,000 to start. Shell himself puts in $5,000. This takes me back to the Walmart episode. And gosh, so smart of having your employees actually invest dollars in the business. Jeff's parents, Mike and Jackie, put in another $100,000. So they have $200,000. That's enough. They hire a couple more engineers to work with Shell, start building out the site. Jeff goes and starts working on relationships with Ingram and Baker and Taylor. McKenzie's doing all the bookkeeping and is sort of like the first CFO of the company. Jeff, this is fun, also echoes of Sam Walton. Did you read about this? How he goes down and takes a course in book selling down in Portland?
Yes, that was awesome. At the National Booksellers or Book Retailers Association, right?
Totally. Oh, so smart. I assume that's how he starts to build relationships in the industry and get Baker and Taylor and Ingram to take him seriously. So great.
Yep. It's worth pointing out at this point. So, we sort of glazed over all right, Shell gets hired and he starts programming. There's very interesting set of technology choices that are made here. And Shell turns out to be the perfect hire. Jeff got very lucky. I don't think Amazon would exist today if it weren't for Shell. And I think that's sort of a widely acknowledged thing among the early team, including Jeff. But there's not really a spec. Jeff, I think, coded up the first HTML web page himself, that sort of white one with the A, with the Amazon River running through it that predates the logo. But when he starts describing it to Shell, Shell's pretty much okay, cool, I know what to build. It's going to be a store, and there's not a lot of these yet, but it's a website where you can buy stuff online. Great. And he just sort of starts coding. And there's a couple interesting things here. One of which is the technology choice of databases. And do you know what database they would eventually sort of choose to standardize on? Because Shell was not a database guy before this.
I'm tempted to say Oracle.
Definitely Oracle.
Interesting.
It was a bake-off between two, and Shell basically was okay, cool, what database software am I going to procure? And the choices were Sybase and Oracle, and Sybase did not return Shell's call, and so he chose Oracle.
Oh my God. Talk about freaking foreshadowing here. If you are an enterprise technology company, you ignore startups at your own peril.
Absolutely. I love that story.
Oh, that's amazing.
There's a couple other interesting things here. And anybody who's been a PM or an engineer working on an engineer PM team or a business guy, tech guy team will sort of know this feeling. And remember, the internet at this point is just very, very pathetic. It's just not the internet as you think about it today in terms of speed or graphics or interface or trust or anything, especially trust around credit cards. People were not yet comfortable entering credit cards on the internet. In fact, more people were comfortable entering credit cards via email, even though it was no more secure. They actually got more people emailing them their credit card information. And they had a way in which you could do stuff like enter just 5 digits of your credit card and then call us, and then we would get the rest of it from you and match it up with the 5 you had entered on your order. But Jeff tells Shell, hey, people are going to want to access this store via 2 different methods. One of them is the web, which is, of course, up and coming. The other of which is email, which people seem to trust a lot. So build 2 storefronts, one that's accessible via email and one that's accessible via web. And Shell kind of just ignores the email thing. He's like, I'm in this technology a lot. I don't think it's going to be an email-based store. And it's a good thing that he started with web. And by the time they had sort of gotten that stood up, it was clear that Jeff had sort of lost interest in the email-based store. But it was almost like a posterist type approach where they're like, what if you could browse and buy from your email? That's how crappy the web was, is it wasn't clear that that was a better form factor than email.
in Brad's book. I get the sense that that's very typical of early Jeff management style of, we got to go do this. And then, some of them like, you actually got to do it. Then some of you are like, well, if I ignore this for a little while,
Yeah.
we're going to do the right thing here.
Yeah. It also became clear in listening to a lot of these interviews with early engineers that they use the word front-end engineer and back-end engineer differently than we do today. Today, when we say front-end and back-end, it means front-end being like client-side JavaScript, typically stuff that executes in your browser, which of course did not really work or exist then. And back-end meant server-side. But what was clear at Amazon in the early days was front-end meant consumer-facing and back-end meant warehouse-facing technology. And it was basically all server-side. In fact, there weren't even cookies yet. And so Shell had to basically invent this way for users to maintain favorited items or a shopping cart without leaving a cookie. And so how do you do that without cookies or sessions? He invented this really insane engine. It's basically a rendering engine called Obidos, which, if anybody knows their South American geography,
it's a tributary to the Amazon, right?
Yeah. And for people who remember browsing Amazon in the early days, you'd go to like amazon.com/exec/obidos/something.
Oh, I definitely didn't do this. This is awesome.
It was a part of the URLs. And so what Obidos did was it could append IDs to the URL and pass them through so that the backend, as we know it in today's parlance, so that the server could match up, oh, this customer just added this other thing to their cart. And so dynamically generate a new web page for them that includes that other thing in their cart. Or what would go on to be include you may also like, or similar products, or recommended personalized products.
Oh, so cool.
This was the very first thing that allowed Amazon to be like a dynamic web application without the use of cookies. And it was just passing these IDs through the URL. And it was all this Obidos sort of dynamic web serving engine that Shell built.
I love it. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Shell is like, you're so right. Like, he was the right guy for the job.
Yep.
This was a grizzled sort of veteran of building software systems that could work on the internet. There were not many people who could do that at that point in time.
No, and in fact, in job postings, I think Bezos put things like experience with websites would be a bonus, but not required. Because like there weren't web developers because there weren't web applications. You would think about it like, hey, I need someone who can write some C code and then figure out the glue to make it so that that interfaces with the HTML that gets generated. But that was all sort of like brand new at the time.
Yeah, amazing. So Shell and the early team of engineers that they bring on working together, they get a beta built like pretty fast.
Really fast.
It was summer of 94 when Jeff and Mackenzie leave D.E. Shaw. And then it takes a few months to figure all the stuff out in the garage in Bellevue. In April of 1995, they ship a beta version of the site. They send out a link to friends and family, like, try it out. You can buy any book you want. Shell's friend, John Wainwright, makes the first purchase on April 3rd, 1995, a book called Fluid Concepts and Creative Analogies by Douglas Hofstadter. Doug Hofstadter's awesome. He wrote Gödel, Escher, Bach.
Oh.
It's super cool. Anyway, it's all like about the nature of consciousness and like a carve out for another day.
Yeah.
But super cool and very apt, geeky first purchase on Amazon.com.
Again, illustrating who the types of people who were interested in Amazon and the movement at the time were.
Yep. And then shortly after that, July 16th, 1995, they launched the site to the public. I totally understand now what Mark Andreessen was saying when he was like, I freaking missed it. I mean, I guess Mark was part of starting this wave. So he was talking about the previous wave, but like me now looking back, I'm like, we freaking missed it, Ben. I have FOMO.
You have FOMO. Yeah.
This would never happen today. They launched it and people came. People loved it. Like it freaking worked immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. And it went very quickly from like a thing that obscure nerds wanted to this has a good enough user experience where regular people are using it quickly and deriving real value. It's not just like it had growth rates of a bunch of bots interacting with each other and therefore the volume looked high.
Bots.
This is very real people who are 1 or 2 clicks out from the early adopters solving real problems that they had before. And it's just everybody telling their friends. In fact, I think there's a stat, the entire first year after the public launch, they spent 0 marketing dollars, and it was all word of mouth and inbound media inquiries because what they were doing was so novel and so useful to the mass market consumer.
Oh, inbound media inquiries. Okay, so they launch it. In the first 2 weeks, they do $25,000 in revenue, but it's just people telling their friends. You can't do that today. Like $25,000 in revenue, like in 2 weeks. You launch something today, nobody's going to use it. And then they get an inbound media inquiry 2 weeks after they launch it from David Philo and Jerry Yang saying, hey, we heard about your site, Amazon. It looks pretty cool. Do you mind if we feature it on our homepage?
And Jeff's like, wait a minute, your homepage. I think a lot of people go to that.
And that was the brand new, at that point, like literally brand new, Yahoo.com. David and Jerry, of course, had started their guide to the web when they were at Stanford grad students the year before in 1994. And they had just incorporated, raised money from Sequoia Capital, turn it into an actual business, and created Yahoo only in March of 1995.
Wow.
It's all happening all at once. Got to assume it was the first place to buy books. Featured on the front page with the letter A on yahoo.com.
Growth hack.
So apparently they get the email.
And had they raised their seed round, their $1 million angel round yet?
No,
okay.
no. So all that context you had on Shell, this makes so much more sense now. I thought he was just being conservative, but he knows what he's doing. They get the email and they're all talking about what to do. And Shell's like, guys, I don't think we're ready for this. I don't think we can handle what's about to happen here.
Because he's only been at startups that didn't really work.
Yes.
He made stuff functional and he was thinking of a certain scale, but he wasn't thinking like millions scale.
Of course, Jeff being Jeff is like, damn the torpedoes, like full speed ahead. We're doing this. We're going to say yes to Yahoo. So they do it. Within the next 2 weeks, so we're just 4 weeks after launch here, they have sold books to people in all 50 states in the country and 45 countries around the world. By the end of those 2 weeks, they are doing 20,000 in sales a week.
On books. These things cost like $20 or $30 each.
And people don't read books. There's Barnes and Noble and but like people don't read books. They made all their money on DVDs and CDs. Nobody reads books. You and me and the acquired community, like we read books, but we're a vast minority.
Most Americans read 1 book a year. I think that's like the mode of number of books per year per person.
Totally. So that first half year that the site is live to the public, they do $500,000 in revenue in 6 months with the $200,000 in friends and family funding.
The initial insight is like pretty perfect product market fit right out of the gate. I mean, it's one of these situations, it's like an Uber or a Twitter where you have this idea and then you put it up and then that's exactly the thing that people want.
I'm sure there will come an age again like this, but in some way, shape, or form. But I can't stress enough, like this does not happen today.
Who got the truth? Is it you? Is it you? Is it you? Sit me down, say it straight. Another story on the way. Who got the truth? Who got the truth now?